So here you go. This is Emily C., my new bestie.
I hate the idea that someone out there hates me. I even hate thinking that Al-Qaeda hates me. I think if they got to know me, they wouldn't hate me.
This stole the show. Emily C. was phenomenal.
There's something you need to know.
What?
You're doing great.
Look at my baby. Here she is. Emily. 10 out of 10. Huge fan.
I see Emily C says 123. I trust her. She's really good.
Listen, Turtle. You gotta watch your language. I'm already live. So you need to follow the FCC guidelines.
She destroyed, left nothing in her path. It was so good.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome. I am so excited this morning to bring back to the show Samantha Benigno, somebody whose work I fully admire and am so impressed by, how she puts out as much content as she does at the quality that she does. I think we need to ask her about today because it is like superhuman. But I wanted to invite her on today to talk about statement analysis, because I think it's something that can feel like a pseudoscience if you don't know the process behind it. And she's done so much incredible work analyzing the testimony of people who have testified, not just in the Karen Read trial, but in multiple trials, in TV interviews and YouTube interviews. And I think this is going to be like the intro class for anybody who might have missed some of her beginning videos, so that we can understand where she's coming up with these incredible conclusions and tying these statements together and pointing out what is true and what is not true. So please join me in welcoming Samantha Benigno.
Hi, guys. So exciting to be here.
I'm so happy. And for everybody, everybody should know that Samantha is somebody not just whose work I admire on YouTube, but somebody who's really become a friend through all of this. And I feel very lucky to know you.
You too, without a doubt.
So, like I was saying, I feel like if somebody just tuned into one of your videos without seeing earlier work up until now, they might be like, okay, well, yeah, like Colin said no to this and never to that. Like I might say the same thing. Like you get bored of saying no, so you switch it up and you say never. You shake your head no because you're thinking of one thing while you're talking about yes. Like I might do the same thing. So I guess let's start way back at the very beginning. I wanted to know from you, like, what drew you to statement analysis and how did you get interested in this?
Oh, that's such a good question. I mean, really, when I first learned of statement analysis, it was straight up from Sergio Gennaro. That's how I learned about it. I didn't know what it was. And when I saw, I don't even remember who the first person that he did an analysis of after the first Karen Read trial. It might have been Jen McCabe. It might have been Jennifer McCabe. I knew when we were watching it originally that I needed to understand what he was doing, because I knew that the answers lied in what he was doing. And I didn't know what he was doing, but I knew that whatever it was important, and it was important enough to try to research and understand soup to nuts as much as I possibly could. And so that's what I wound up doing. And it turned out that when you look at body language analysis, which is distinctly different, I want to be clear, from statement analysis, they are different animals. But when you look into, because I've looked into both extensively, body language is something completely different. The world of deception detection is something else, right? These are sort of all under the same umbrella, but they're very distinctly different animals, which we can talk more about. But it is built on a science that turns out I have been studying extensively for the last 4 years. So it's very interesting that it just all kind of dovetailed perfectly together without me knowing it.
So, what is the difference between deception detection and statement analysis?
So statement analysis is a tool, right? It's a tool for understanding deception that was essentially built by law enforcement to guide their interrogation process so that when they're sitting with a suspect or an interviewer, even or interviewee, they can sort of know where to take the conversation, where to push, where to take a step back. And it just sort of grew out of, I think, like lie detection, the natural
Hmm.
progression of lie detection, trying to figure out, is there some way that we can like crack a code to find out if somebody's telling us the truth, right? I think that's where the sort of motivation grew from. But it dovetails obviously into all these other sciences. And the big one for me is psycholinguistics, which is really what we're talking about when we talk about statement analysis. So there are these different, tools that are sort of underneath the larger deception detection umbrella, and they're very different. But what I think the science is going in a very specific direction, and it's moving away from what I would call body language analysis.
And why do you think that? Like, is this kind of the kind of thing where it's going to be like, what do they call it? Like bite analysis of things in crime analysis that have like gone to the wayside. Like, why do you think that
Mhm.
body language is kind of the first to take a back seat?
So it's not that okay. So for a long time, for many years, uh, when people were trying to detect deception, they were essentially comparing apples and oranges. It would be like
Hmm.
me trying to apply one model of what deception looks like to me, to you, to everybody on the planet, right? And that's the problem when you're learning anything and you try to take this one thing and apply it everywhere. It turns out that when you do an actual analysis of how accurate it is, it's no more than chance. And
Yeah.
that kept us stuck for a really long time. And I think where the science is going, and this is why baselining turns out to be the single most important factor in any analysis, you have to know who you're talking about. And that's everything. The person that we are analyzing, they have to, you have to know who they are to really be certain in your analysis. Because it
And
turns
so
out that
that's
when
when
you're,
you're
yeah, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. So that's when you're doing a baseline, right? That's like the first step to all of this is the baseline. So
Right.
what do you do when you're baselining?
It's interesting because I think everybody does this a little bit differently. Certainly if you were looking at Sergio, he's really going to lean mostly on words, speech
Hmm.
production, right? And how that comes out. Um, you then have folks who are looking at the body language aspect. And
Hmm.
I think where I've kind of landed is somewhere in the middle, more using body language as a guidepost, right? As a way to say, okay, wait, this is something I need to take a closer look at. Because when you see something that is just explicitly different from anything you've seen from that person before, then it jumps out at you, right? So, and I think there's two levels of analysis from a baseline. So the baseline just means that you're getting to know how somebody speaks when they're not stressed, when they are speaking honestly about something. And yeah, so, when they're just talking about like where they're from, what color, what colors they like, whatever stuff
Yeah.
that's maybe not a great example, but verifiable facts is basically what you're looking for. And remember, and this is so important because I think this confuses people. When we are talking about what we're all doing, we're doing it in a very specific context, right? These formal situations like a trial or an
Hmm.
interrogation where the stakes are very self-evident. Somebody walked into a courtroom and took an oath of honesty, and there's pressure applied inherently as a result of that, right? if you and I are just hanging out having coffee, we didn't take an oath before we sat down. And so that creates a distinction in how we communicate. It's important to say that because this can get confusing for people when you try to take what I'm about to say and apply it universally in every context.
Yeah, that was something that I kind of like wrestled with at first when I started following Sergio. And then when you started doing this, was like, I got stuck in the like, but they're in court, so they might just be nervous. Like maybe they're stumbling over this part of their testimony because they're just nervous. Like when I get nervous, like who knows what comes out of my mouth. But then when you start to realize, well, if you're nervous, then you're nervous the whole time. You're probably especially nervous when you first sit down on the stand before you start like kind of feeling more comfortable and getting going on your testimony. So the fact that you weren't doing these specific things that we're noticing when it gets to like a more contentious question in the whatever you call it, the cross-examination, then it's not the nerves that are, or it might be the nerves for a different reason, but it's not just the nerves of being there that's making somebody kind of stumble or uncontract their contractions or use different pronouns or skip over information. It's something else that's happening.
Right. And it all has to do with how language is produced. So there are essentially like governing rules that we learned when we're very young. And it's really what happens when we are both recalling information from memory and then trying to censor information in combination with sort of basic laws of how we are organized, like a law of efficiency, energy efficiency. When you start adding all these kind of laws, stacking them on top of each other, then you are also factoring in baseline. That's how all of a sudden you can become, your certainty in what you're seeing goes up, right?
And because this is the intro class, can you explain what the law of efficiency is and how that applies to this?
Yeah. So we are all just naturally, every single day, we wake up, and one scientist that I admire calls it a body budget. Based on our habits and our patterns, we have allocated a certain amount of energy each day to what we're doing, right? And the basic law that governs pretty much DNA, period, that's universal, is energy efficiency. We're always trying to find shortcuts. It's sort of like, I always use the example of when you walk into, like, let's say the first time you moved into wherever you're living now, you don't know where the light switches are. It takes extra energy and effort, like, oh shit, where's that light switch again? And you got to go look for it, right? Or when you were learning to tie your shoes, it's like this laborious process and it feels like you're never going to get it. And of course, you learn it. And once you learn it, it becomes automatic. And that's how we are with everything, right? Everything that we do with any kind of consistency or continuity becomes automated. So your brain is always looking to automate so that it can essentially conserve energy. And what we see with speech is that we're going to look for the most efficient way to communicate. It's just part of how we are. So when somebody is, adding words that really don't belong, that are extra, or going out of their way to say something when there's a very simple, clear way to say it, that means there's something else going on.
Interesting. So I feel like I'm trying to think what the best way to do this is, because I want to know like kind of your process. Do you think it makes sense to just pull up somebody's testimony and kind of like go through what your process would be, or do you want to talk through it first? Like, actually, let's talk through it first and then kind of apply it. Just so if any other questions come up. So after you baseline someone, you kind of figure out do you have like a checklist of like what you're looking for in a baseline, or you're just kind of like, what you're looking for now? There are certain mannerisms, language types.
That's a really good question. So this, for me, my process is really interesting. I mean, it's developing in real time, right? So I'm thinking about Sarah Levinson. She's coming to mind because I resisted. She's kind of boring, right? And so I resisted really doing a full analysis for a very long time because it's like, I got to sit through this,
Like how I feel about Lally, and then I'm like, oh, fine, I'll watch something from the
Exactly.
first trial, and 5 minutes in, I'm like,
Exactly. He asks these, but actually what it turned out that was so helpful. All these ridiculous, monotonous, boring as hell questions wound up giving all of us this great opportunity to get really thorough baselines from every
Mhm.
single witness that he brought in front of us.
Yeah, I said the other day that listening to Lally ask questions is like driving behind a really slow car when you really have to pee and you just want to get home to pee and you're
Oh,
just stuck behind the super slow car.
yeah, and
But you're right, like
even the judge felt that way, right? Like she's like, "We've heard
but you're
enough about
right
the
though.
house."
Like Hank wasn't going to ask 400 questions to Karina Kolokeithis about why her daughter didn't play in the varsity game and like then ask the same questions to her husband. So we do, in the end, we
Yeah,
suffered through it for a reason and it gave us a
we
lot of
did.
good information.
It really did.
um,
Yeah, yeah,
but yeah, so
yeah.
Sarah Levinson, for example. So you
Yes.
finally bit the bullet and went back to
I
her.
did, and so what I'll do is I'll take the beginning of the direct. So it's really interesting because the direct testimony is where most of my attention will go. I really don't spend as much time with cross-examination until after there's been a baseline and something important that
Mhm,
you're looking for. So because that's where they give you all the information, they feel safer, right? This is
mhm.
their person, they trust them. Uh, Julie Nagel is a great example of that, right? Just the different person that came out in defense versus on direct. But so what I will do is I will just watch. I will just sit and watch very carefully on a very big screen, uh, so that I can see everything that's happening, and it just sort of do it intuitively. Then I'll go back and pay much closer attention to precisely how she's answering questions. And you can start to see if you're really paying attention. I mean, this is the thing. We're not usually, right? We're just not. When you listen, for example, to Matt McCabe's testimony, as soon as he gets to the part about the house and after the waterfall, uh, there's so many levels of stuff happening. And on the most surface level, it's just like, you just kind of glaze over it, right? But when you are really listening and you start going like, wait a minute, this doesn't even make sense logically. And then you go back and you're like, okay, now I see what's going on here. That same thing happened with Allie. So for me, there's sort of levels of analysis. And then all of a sudden it sort of clicks. And I can't really explain that part. I think that's
Mhm.
just from doing this for so long and studying and studying and studying and studying, um, to now where I just can see it and it just jumps out. But it takes time. And then the final part of the analysis I should mention is the actually looking at their testimony, seeing the words spelled out in front of me.
And then you're able, I feel like you're taking it one step further, kind of outside of the statement analysis, to then, once you notice inconsistencies or just outright lies about a specific moment in time, now you're able to kind of create this whole, like, okay, there was a lie here, but this part was true. And there was a lie on when this person was talking about that same moment, but this part was true.
Right.
So this is really what was happening because we know that they were, when so and so said they were here, that was true. So now they're all here.
That's
How
right.
do
Yeah.
you make that leap, to be able to kind of like what happens next where you're able, do you like, do you have a spreadsheet? Do you have a paper? It's just all in your head?
Yeah, it's just all in my head. So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's why I think it took so long, right? It took so
Yeah.
long is because you have to know these people. You have to know all of them. You have to know really where all of them say that they were on a basic level. And it just took time. The other thing that's really important about this case, the Karen Reed stuff, that's distinctly different from anybody else is the amount of information, the number of testimonies, and you have to the question that we're asking. I mean, this is really a big lesson for me in this case. Karen's lawyers are asking different questions going
Yeah.
into the information, right? Because they're all thinking, okay, how do we get her acquitted in front of a jury? So the question that they started with is absolutely different. They're thinking like lawyers. They're not thinking like us who are going, what happened that night? What happened to John and
Right.
Keith, right? Um, we're in the same ballpark, right? And we're the same characters, same cast, same information. But when you go in with a targeted question to this information, it changes the game completely. So the more specific you are, the easier it is to start to see what's going on because you're asking a far more nuanced question. When you're generally asking, there's so much information that your brain literally cannot sort all of the information at once. So when I started to ask specific questions, specifically in this case, why is it that nobody can tell you what they were doing that night, right? Why are all of these people not able to say anything at all about what they were doing? That was the absolute game changer because it narrowed the information that I was looking at. And ultimately, the answer became abundantly obvious, right? There wasn't enough time for them to do anything at all, really.
Right. When you first said that, I was kind of like, oh, like, what would I say if I keep going back to like, what would I say if the last time I was at like a house party and somebody said to me, like,
Exactly.
what did you do? And I was like, I don't know. I probably would have just said I was hanging out. And then I was like, no, I wouldn't. I would say like, oh, I was sitting with so-and-so and he was telling me about his new job. And then I remember I got a drink from the refrigerator. I bumped into so-and-so. Like you have
Exactly.
actual moments that you're able to recall. And it's not just like, talking, laughing, playing music. Like it's not the same just talking point over and over again. And especially if they want us to think that they had a full evening together, like they didn't just have 4 minutes together where they might have just walked in and taken off their shoes and then all hell broke loose.
Right. That's it. That's exactly right. Yep.
And nobody had a single anecdote, a single like,
Nothing.
oh, we I talked to so and so about their new baby sister. Like nothing, literally nothing.
Right. And then they were afraid to say too much because they didn't want to contradict each other. Right. So, and
they still did anyway.
Upstairs,
downstairs, the Sun and the Marines.
That's right. And again, that's the Sun and the Marines is a great example. It's a detail that unless you're really paying attention, you're not going to catch. Like there's no jury in the world that actually grasped in real time that story was coming out differently from all of the witnesses, right? I barely grasped it until that was what I was looking at. And like, wait a minute, wait, what? That's totally different from what so-and-so said, right?
And when you said the thing about Karen's attorneys kind of having a different approach than like what we're doing right now, I feel like we're lucky that we have as much detail as we do about what was happening in the house in general, because really, if they wanted to prove that Karen didn't hit John, all they needed was the beginning and the end. Like, okay, so you watched a car drive away and then you guys all walked outside and there wasn't a person there. So Karen didn't hit him. Like, that's all that goes to their motive to free her. And so I think we're lucky we even have as much as we do. They did kind of learn their lesson in the first trial where they were like, okay, we're actually not going to go that deep into the house defendants because that makes you guys think that you have to find somebody guilty instead of just finding one person not guilty.
Right. But it was actually, I go back to this one moment with Hank Brennan and Jennifer McCabe where he really wants her to answer. He's like, what happened in there? He's asking about the house because they were trying to prove that they were innocent. So that point in time was important for the prosecution, not the defense, because they were trying to get them to say, yeah, it was a normal night. Like we were just like exactly what you were saying. Oh, me and Julie talked about her, her brother and his new girlfriend. They were trying to elicit that testimony from these people. That's who had the investment in these guys coming across as honest, not the defense, right?
Right.
And that's why that was so important for them.
And Hank couldn't even really get that from them. Like they still didn't sound honest.
No, and she was defensive, in fact, like nothing. That was what she said.
And there's nobody to object. She can't make eyes at anybody to object. It's
Right.
casting.
That's her,
That must
right?
have been
That's
a
like
really
her
stressful
person.
moment.
Oh, poor Jen. Very stressed.
Okay, so if I pull up somebody's testimony, who do you think is a good person that you want to kind of walk through? Like if we wanted to learn how to baseline,
Yeah.
or like
You could
what
pick
we're looking for.
really anybody. I mean, it's up to you. Any of these
First
folks
name I
are,
see in the chat, that's what we're going with.
yeah, just anyone.
Matt McCabe, Karma Dharma wins.
Fun. Matt is so much fun. Oh, Matt is a little tougher too, I will tell you, because I think Matt, of all of the witnesses, Matt has the least emotional investment. He's able to, Matt McCabe is really able to disassociate or disconnect from the events themselves more than anybody else, which made him a little bit more challenging than some of the other folks.
Interesting. I wonder what that says about him as a person outside of this. Okay, let me pull that up. Share screen.
It is interesting.
Also share tab audio. Okay, I'm just going to start it and then you tell me when to stop at any time and we'll chat about it.
Ooh, Matt, fun.
Ready.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Matthew McCabe, M-C-C-A-B-E.
And where do you live, sir?
Canton, Massachusetts.
And how long have you lived in Canada?
I'll be 20 years this coming June.
And during the time that you have lived in Canada, have you lived at the same place or have you lived at different places?
Different places.
Okay, so you can pause it right away. So right away, what jumps out at me, that you can tell that Matt's been instructed to be succinct in his answers. So he's trying to not interject. He's trying to simply give Adam Lally the answer he's asking for. And you can see that right away, right? And so what you're now we're going to look for is more evidence of that to say, okay, is that true? And does that pattern remain through these next real softball questions? He's just going to ask about, his wife, his kids, that kind of stuff. And so that's now what we're going to be looking for. Because some of these folks will actually put the answers into full sentences. So, can you tell us where you live? Right. Well, I've lived here for 20 years. The fact that he's not doing that, he's just Canton, Massachusetts. So that's something that we're going to be paying attention to.
And if we're tying body language into it, you notice him at the end of the question kind of lean back and purse his lips, almost like he knows that he's not supposed to be chatty right now. Like he seems like maybe he's typically a chatty guy, but for this, he's
Correct.
like, okay, I said the answer, like reminding himself not to say more.
That's right. Yep, exactly.
You live there.
Currently, I will be 10 years this June.
And where did you live prior to that?
Prior to that, you want the physical address?
Yes.
15 Sutcliffe Ave. I was there for 10 years as well.
And with respect to both locations, who, if anyone, you live with?
I live with my wife and my 4 daughters.
And what is your wife's name?
Jennifer.
And how long have you and Jennifer McCabe been married? 2022, so 23 years in August. And you have 4 daughters, is that right?
That's correct.
And how old are you?
I'm 49. Oh, my daughters?
That's okay. Your daughters, how old are your daughters?
20, 18, 16, and 15.
And your oldest daughter is Allie McCabe, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so now we start looking at things like, okay, yes, that's correct. So we see that again, he's actually following what I was saying earlier, the law of efficiency also, right? So he's trying to find the most succinct way to answer the question. He's careful. He doesn't want to interject extra information unless there's a need to. So he's trying to figure out, all right, what is Lally asking of me? Now that's important too, because, and you're going to see as we go along, the questions become increasingly important. What the actual question was. You can't ignore the question. There's a tendency to want to, like, I want to just ignore the question and I want to just focus on what they're saying. But as these questions become more challenging, you really have to pay attention to exactly not only what the question was, but how it was asked.
It's almost like when you listen to like a presidential debate and they learn how to like spin the question. So you kind of like ignore the question because you're like, okay, they're spinning it in what they want to talk to. But now I'm every time that I've done that, I'm like, I've missed a whole piece of it, which is like, why did you want to move away from that question? What was the question that you chose not to answer? And then like, why would that question have been sensitive over another question that you say, well, like, wow, thank you for the question. And then you answer just that question fully and in detail.
Right. And that's exactly right. You have to know what the question is to know whether or not they're actually answering that question.
And right now he really looks like clued in. You see him kind of like turning his like eyes, like really, really listening to the question. He clearly didn't see some of these coming. Like he didn't know ahead of time how old his daughters were when he got
That's true.
married. Like those seem like things maybe you should have prepared for. But it's like already obvious when he's actually thinking about the question and wanting to answer just that question in full detail.
Right. Yep.
Do you work, sir?
Yes, I do.
Goofball.
What do you do for work?
Yes, I do.
I work for a information technology solutions firm.
And how long have you been doing that?
2009. So I think I'm coming on 15 years.
And does your wife work?
No.
What does your wife do?
Stay at home, raises the kids.
So right away we see
Homemaker.
he stumbled here, right? Stay at home. Now, obviously, Matt is pretty transparent. He's a lot like Allie. She's a lot like him, actually. She takes after Dad in some of her mannerisms and just that transparency that they can't hide. So we see right away, obviously, this was a sensitive response, sensitive question. He didn't know exactly how to navigate. And so we see what we would expect when somebody is, answering a sensitive question. He stumbled a little bit, like stay. He wasn't exactly sure how politically correct he needed to be when he answered this question, right?
Because Jen has probably told him multiple times, I have the hardest job out of everybody in this house.
Of course.
And he's has that playing in his head right now. It's like, do I say she doesn't do anything? Do I say she doesn't work? How do I make her happy?
Right. And I don't want to offend the jurors.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember, these guys are all in here to sell their story to the jury, not to us. That's really important. Probably by trial 2, Jennifer is, because she's a representative of the group, is more cognizant of all of us. But for this part, they were really singularly focused on selling this crap to the jury.
And boy, did they ever.
I'd like to turn your attention to January 28th and to January 29th of 2022. Do you recall those days?
Yes, I do.
Recall what days they did?
Friday into Saturday.
Yeah. So,
and did you work that day on
and
Friday?
All of these questions are really helpful because we see that there's a formality. He is trying to be formal. We have to factor that in because, as you were saying about contractions, that can get a little confusing. The reason that contractions or uncontracting is important is because we know that when somebody's really trying to make a point, they'll uncontract. They won't say can't, they'll say cannot, they'll say I did not do this. But from speech habits and patterns, when somebody is an innocent person with nothing to hide, you don't see the same level of insistence unless or until they're not being believed, right? So
Right.
if you're in an interrogation, the first couple of times that somebody's, a police officer suggests that you're guilty, you're not going to see, I did not do that. You're not going to see that kind of emphatic denial, because the natural thing to do is be like, I wasn't there. I don't know what to
Yeah.
tell you, right? Yeah.
And then when they keep pushing it and you're like, wait a second, like, no, I was not there. I don't know why we're still having this conversation. Like, go find the right person.
Yes.
You want to make it, that's your next step of making it like even more clear.
Right. And so you'd expect that. But if it starts out at that level of denial, then that's a flag like, wait, I wasn't even really accusing you of anything. I didn't
Right.
even suggest that you were the one that did it. Right. Yeah.
Yes, I did.
And at that point, do you recall, were you working in an office or remotely?
I don't recall if that specific day I was in the office. Sometimes I'd go in, sometimes I'd work from home. So I don't recall if I actually was physically in the office. Sometimes I'll go in for a few hours. So I don't recall exactly if I was home or in the office that day.
So this is interesting. This
So
actually gave
regardless,
us
at
a lot
some
of
point you sort of wrap
information,
up
this
work.
answer. So you could see that his focus wasn't on, certainly not on the sentence structure. So he's used contraction. I don't remember. I don't recall, I think is what he said. And so it's hard to say. We don't know why Matt doesn't want us to know whether or not he was in the office on that day. Who can say? Who the hell knows with these people? But he doesn't want us to know that, obviously, but it wasn't that important, right? So what we see here is that he does use contraction. So again, that's important. We want to just note that it wasn't such an important question, but we also can see that he's protecting something, right? So that's also important right away. Yeah.
How would his answer have looked different if he really didn't remember if he was in the office? Like if he hadn't thought about it and he wasn't able to recall in this moment, like what would that have looked like?
So that is what this is, to your point. That's what in other words, Matt, if he stopped and thought about it, and this is where I can't, these are where some of these words start to become increasingly important, right? And the truth is we don't know yet because Matt is different than me. So we can't say definitively how Matt McCabe would look different. That's why we're taking the baseline to find out what would be different about Matt McCabe when he's really doesn't remember, really doesn't know. The thing is, he doesn't want us to know. And we know that because I'm sure the original question, it's true. I don't remember because I'd have to stop and think about it. What he's really sort of saying, though, is I'd have to stop and think about it, and I'm not willing to do that in this moment. My guess is, as he thought about it and was trying to give us an answer, the answer became, he did find the answer, right? And just didn't give it to us, right? So because we see three different iterations there.
It's probably scary in that moment, sitting up there to take your mind back to that day and put yourself before everything happened, because you're scared that like the rest of the rest of the day is going to play out in your mind, and he's doing everything to avoid that.
I always think about that too, because you have to try to figure that out. In other words, it's interesting. You would think more often than happens that people would be interjecting the present into the past, but that's not what most of us do. Most of us literally take ourselves back. Now, these guys have this extra level of energy they have to be asserting all the time. They have to decide before they say anything whether it's a safe topic. And we saw this. This is how I was able to definitively determine that whatever happened to John didn't happen in the garage, because a drunk Chris Albert on a Spaces randomly is not going to start talking about the garage unless it's a safe topic, right? Now, he stopped himself when he started talking about there being no tunnel from the house to the garage, right? Which I think was fascinating to interject, because nobody had said that there was in that moment except for him, right? But when you have a drunk Chris talking about the paint on the garage floor and he's okay to do it, well, that's right away a big, obviously he felt safe enough to be able to just drunk speak, right? And that tells you if it's safe to Chris Albert, it's not a threat to us, right?
That's such a good point.
Work for the day, and where did you go?
Yes, finished up work and met some friends at a restaurant in Canton before my daughter's basketball game.
Right. So,
And, so on that evening, your daughter had
Here-
a basketball game. Is that right?
you see that
Yes, that's correct.
he went back. So here he reminded himself that he's supposed to just answer the questions. So he goes back to kind of, okay, no, I'm just supposed to answer. And you can see that he's really trying to determine how much information to give as he's being asked these questions, right? Like he's really trying to figure that out. Should I specify which friends we were with? And then he has to remember, okay, if it's important, Lally will ask me a follow-up question, right? So that's something
Less
he's
is
kind
more.
of weighing as he's going through.
Well, even when he says right there, I finished up work, it's like if that is really coming from memory, then you know if you finished up work at home or at the office. So you know the answer to the question before that you said you didn't. So it is
Right.
really interesting to see what they choose to share and
Yeah.
why.
And he didn't say I finished. He said finished.
Finished up.
Right. And that's that's important. There is actually a very specific and different, approach there. Which is again,
what is the why would somebody take themselves out of the sentence or take the pronoun I?
oh, well,
out?
there's all kinds of reasons why, right? I mean, we can immediately question the validity of the statement, right? So there's something he doesn't want us to know. That would be immediately what I would suspect. But I also think he's trying to go back to this, I'm going to just give the answer. So he has reminded himself not to say too much.
Literally that face right there, like
There it is,
pursed
yeah.
lips for-
Don't say too
And,
much. Don't say too much.
Who did she play for at that?
Yep, there it is.
She played for Canton High School.
Is that the varsity game?
Yes.
And which of your
Who the hell
daughters,
cares?
as far as age is concerned, which of your daughters was playing basketball for Canton High School at that time?
That would be my second oldest, who's
I'm sorry, go ahead.
my second oldest.
Right. So here's another example.
And,
where
so you,
he doesn't know how much information to give. And you can see he's almost a little surprised by like, why am I being asked this question? Right.
Mhm.
And I do think that part of Adam Lally's strategy is twofold. One is just flood the zone, give as much information as you possibly can to a jury so they can't discern what's important and what's not. But also because he wants these people to seem like, normal moms, normal people.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm.
That was funny when he said who's, and then Lally was like, go on. And he's like, no,
Yeah. Right. Like, what do you want? What do you want from me?
like what was coming next? Who's what? Who's 18 now? What was the
Right.
next part of that sentence?
Right.
after work, had met some other people at an establishment in Canton. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Where did you go?
The establishment was called the Canton Junction Pub or Canton Junction. I don't know the full name, but just went by the Junction.
And who, if anyone,
Yeah,
did
so
you
this is
meet
a
in
great
this conjunction?
question to try to get a sense of who Matt is, because it's completely insignificant to him. It does not matter to Matt. It's a completely irrelevant question, where they were, who they were hanging out with. So it's a factual answer, right? We know it's factual. You see that he's using contractions, and it's not that important. He wants to try to give us the right answer, which is what you would expect to see with somebody who is being honest. Like, people are generally truthful, and they really are. There's a giant drive inside of you to tell the truth. It's very strong. This is why statement analysis is, has such a, the research is still advancing, but this is why when you do a proper baseline, you start to get numbers into the 80s in terms of accuracy of being able to register deception, as opposed to that chance number that we had seen for years when you compare one person to another and then try to apply these general sets of rules. That's because, for example, even when I have an experience in my memory, it gets encoded in language. Like, so even the words that are coming out can be directly connected to the sequence of events that occurred. That's why you'll have leakage spill in. For example, Caitlin Albert did this in such a profound way. She would just distinctly switch from present to past tense when she was recalling or pretending to recall something from that night, right? So, and some people will do that because it's natural. It's leakage. It's a way that we can just discern, where memories are kind of coming from and how much of it is being censored upon, because it's automatic. I mean, you just can't control the articles and the syntax. You can't control it. That's the problem. And that's how statement analysis is so effective, right? Because you can try to self-censor, but it's already, as the words are coming out, it's been selected previously, right? And that's where you just do not have control.
That is so interesting to think that, we think we have so much control over everything that we're saying and doing, but our brain is just already on a programmed path because of how that's what you need to be able to like survive, is a brain that can retain information and hold it in the way that it happened.
Yeah. And we are organized in a truthful way. So we're not organized. Your brain really doesn't know the word no, believe it or not. It doesn't know no and not. It only knows yes. So when you try to add stop signs, no's and nots, it's a lot of extra effort. So we see it. That's why you start the stumbling happens, the self-monitoring happens. It's like you're trying to put another layer of monitoring on top of what's coming out. And certainly when you have a situation like a courtroom, it's not possible. And that's why deception is so, I don't want to say easy to detect, but it's why we're able to detect it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Handful of folks that play whose daughters play basketball on the same team with my daughter.
So here you saw that again, right?
See through.
What did I just do?
He said handful of folks, like he did not give a complete answer. And we have to factor that in because these are not sensitive questions. These are about the basketball game. If anything, they may be sensitive simply because he's disclosing personal information about his kids, right? So there might be a level of sensitivity, a desire to protect them. But there's no need to completely misrepresent reality here. So I think that's where the short answers are coming from.
I'm trying to go back and see where I just messed it up from.
I think we were at the basketball game, right?
Yeah.
Age is concerned. Which of your daughters was playing basketball for Kent High School at that time?
Yes, that's correct.
Where did you go?
Folks that play basketball.
Parents who had kids on the basketball team?
Yes, that's correct.
Was your wife Jennifer there with you at that time as well?
Yes, that's correct.
And about how long were you at the junction?
Game 6:30, give or take hour and a half.
And girls varsity basketball, was there sort of like a typical time that game would start or game would be scheduled for them?
Yes.
And what time is that?
Typically 6 or 6:30 would be the normal time. I don't remember if it was a 6:30 start that night or actually I think it was a 6:30 start, but typically 6 or 6:30.
Right. So we
sometime
see
around 6 or 6:30, you make your way over.
Yes, that's correct. And I don't remember our, trusted baseline responses for him when he's having conversations that are not that important to him. He knows are not that important to this case. However, they're also deliberate, right? He was coached, obviously, by somebody that this is how you're going to answer the question. So we know that there's rehearsal, a very large amount of rehearsal, that an agreement sort of, universally among this group of witnesses about how they were going to approach testimony.
And he does that thing where he talks to himself, like, okay, game's at 6:30. So, and with, when he started work, okay, started in 2009. He said it with Jen asking how long they've been married for.
Yep.
That's something I wonder if he continues when questions get harder.
Way
Yeah.
over to the high
I don't
school, is
think
that
so.
correct?
That is correct.
And in that, I mean, was this a home game, a road game, if you recall?
That evening, it was a home game.
Do you recall anything about the game as far as who they were playing or if they won or anything like that?
Yes, it was. They were playing the town of Foxborough High School, and they did not win. They went into overtime and lost.
Again,
Now,
another
with respect
example.
to,
This is one of the things that makes Matt a little bit more challenging than some of the other witnesses, because, and Allie does this too, he sees the moment as a more formal moment, and he's trying to meet the moment. That's why he's uncontracting. When he remembers, oh, I'm on a witness stand, this is a formal situation, that's why he said did not, right? So we have to keep that in mind, that with him, because he was trying to represent this formal, sort of like well-polished, almost intellectual approach. I don't know why they do it, but Allie does it too. We have to keep that in mind with Matt. He's going to continue to keep that up throughout.
Like almost like he's on a job interview, like putting his best self forward.
Right. Yep. That's right.
your wife, Jennifer, as the kids were growing up, what if anything, what if any relationship did she have as far as with respect to the kids in basketball?
It's grown as like the youth years. Jennifer
right?
was a basketball coach.
He's like, Matt's like, oh, you want me to tell everybody that she coached? Okay, I'll do that. I got you, Lally. I got where you're going with this one.
Yeah, it's so like, why were you asking me this question? But
it took him a second to figure out why. Like, he's like, there's some, I forget, what did you want me to say? Oh, you want me to say she's a normal mom? Okay.
Exactly. That's right. Yes.
And coached throughout the years, coached a couple of my daughters.
So she coached, and with respect to the daughter that was playing at the high school game that night, was that one of the daughters that she had coached?
Yes, that's correct.
Fair to assume she had also coached several of the girls that were on the varsity basketball team with your daughter, correct?
Yes, a few of them, yes.
Now, when you get to...
and they lost? Okay, so she coached them, she coached their formative years and they lost? Bummer.
I know, right. Like, you see Matt's face, he doesn't like talking about his kid. Like, he doesn't like this line of questioning, right? He really doesn't like this.
Canton High School to the basketball game, is there sort of a typical area where you would sit or people you would congregate with while you're watching the game?
Yes, we'd sit up in the bleachers. Usually the parents from the home side would tend to sit in the same area.
So you sit there, you watch the game, game is over, and then what is sort of the plan from there, or where do you go?
After the game, I drove my younger two daughters back home.
So your whole family was there for the game, is that correct?
My wife and my two younger daughters. My older daughter was there. She wasn't with us, but she was there as well.
She was a student at Canton High School at that time as well?
Yes, she was.
So she's sitting with the other students, is that correct?
Yes, I'm assuming. I don't recall where she sat, but most likely with the other students.
So you drove your two daughters home, and then where did you go from there?
After dropping my daughters off, my wife and I proceeded to the waterfall in Canton Center.
So
and,
there's,
do you recall what?
we take note, I take note of the word after, just because he's used it now a few times. So it's something that I would just note. And what it tells me is that there's most likely something he's skipping over. It's some small detail. It's probably completely insignificant to us. right? But that there's something that happened. Maybe he dropped the kids off. He had a conversation with Allie at the house. I mean, who knows what it is? Who cares? But there's something he just glossed over in between, like the kids and the waterfall. And it's probably just not that important.
Is this, I wanted to put the transcript, but then I feel like we can't see him as well. So I'm actually not going to do that.
You could probably put the captions. I'm not sure if that would. Yeah, that might help.
You were just in one vehicle when you left the house and went to the junction and went to the high school game, back to the house and to the waterfall. Was it the same vehicle?
Yes, we were in the same vehicle.
And do you recall what kind of vehicle it was or whose vehicle it was?
It was the family vehicle. It was my wife's vehicle. I don't know, what was it? I don't know if it was a Suburban or a Yukon. I forget what brand it was.
Yeah, so these are
Yes, a large SUV.
any topic with Matt where like he didn't know how to represent whether it was a family vehicle or if it was his wife's, and I'm sure he paid for it. So it's like these kinds of little stupid places he kind of gets a little tripped up. We also have to pay attention to things like how he talks about his exactly. I mean, to Sarah's point, right? You paid for it, bro. You know what it was. Yeah, but he also, it's not his. So he's not sure how to represent. Like, is it my wife's? Is it mine? So these are like stupid things that are just sensitive points for Matt McCabe. For whatever reason, they have nothing to do with us in any kind of significant way, but we note them.
Yeah.
Right. So we also note, again, he continues kind of with this like desire to want to present in a more formal way, using more formal language. So we note that. And there was something else that he said. Oh, anytime he speaks about Jennifer, it's close. We see consistently a pattern of closeness between him and his wife. So that's something else that we just note. You don't see that with Nicole and Brian Albert. Just put it that way. You don't see that between them. You do see that between Matt and Jen.
And yet they were the ones doing it at 2 a.m.
Right, that's right. Allegedly.
And why did you go to the waterfall?
We went to the waterfall. My wife informed me that her sister was at the waterfall with her niece and a few other people. And we went to go meet them. My understanding, it was my nephew's birthday, either that day or the day after, and they were going to meet out at the waterfall for his birthday.
And
so if I were doing this analysis, I would stop here and say, wait, what was the question? Because this was a longer answer from Matt than we've seen. So this answer gets flagged right away, because he gave us more information than was probably asked, but more information than we've seen so far. So this is kind of how this process starts to, we're getting more into sensitive topics. We're starting to trend into the waterfall. We're getting closer to the time of the crime. And now we're starting to see Matt's answers are getting longer. Well, why did he just interject more information than he had prior to this at this question? What exactly?
The question was why did you go to the waterfall?
Right. So, and you see that he did kind of stumble here. So the question is, why did you go to the waterfall? And what was his answer? Let's go back and look at that again.
The actual transcript is, we went to the waterfall. My wife informed me that her sister was at the waterfall with her niece and a few other people, and we went to go meet them. My understanding, it was my nephew's birthday, either that day or the day after, and they were going to meet out at the waterfall for his birthday.
Right. So we would pay attention to that answer. Now, obviously, the important thing that he wants us to take from that. So I take a lot of things from that statement, just about Matt in general. He clearly wants to come across in this very formal way. I mean, it's just how he's trying to approach this in his strategy, right? So he's using words that you wouldn't usually expect to see when you're just speaking casually about your nephew's birthday party. But the message here is he wants us to know that's why they were there. They're there because of Brian Jr.'s birthday. So, we know that's what Matt wants us to know. And, obviously there's some that's a little odd given the fact that Brian Jr. is not at the waterfall, but we're familiar enough with these guys to know that this is how they roll. And that's what he wants us to know. So we just note that. Okay, Matt wants us to know. We don't know why at this moment. We just know Matt wants us to know that he's there because of Brian Jr.'s birthday.
As Got a Bad Feeling says, time to celebrate Brian Jr.'s birthday without Brian Jr.
I got a bad feeling. That's right. I love it. I love it. I just love it. It's just, but they represented They represented that to John O'Keefe. I mean, they literally represented that the entire way through, right? That's like a really common, Chris Albert tells that to John, and I believe that he told that to John. Oh, we're all going out because it's my nephew's birthday.
Yeah, without him. This is that answer again.
And why did you go to the waterfall?
We went to the waterfall. My wife informed me that her sister was at the waterfall with her niece and a few other people, and we went to go meet them. My understanding, it was my nephew's birthday, either that day or the day after, and they were going to meet out at the waterfall for his birthday.
And just to be clear, as far as who we're talking about, your wife's sister, what's her name?
Nicole Albert.
And is Nicole married?
Yes, she is.
And what's her husband's name?
Brian Albert.
You
and
also,
the niece that you're talking about, there was.
So I'm just thinking back to that answer. There's a lot in that answer, right, that we can start to build from. My understanding. So there was a reduction of commitment in there. And to me, the most likely reason why we see that is because, again, what he knows his marching orders are is to make sure we know that's why they were there, because it was Brian Jr.'s birthday. I don't know why they even needed a reason to be there, to be honest. Who gives a shit why they're there? But he thinks it's important that we know that. So the fact that he reduced his commitment tells us that, maybe that's not really why he's going there. Not that it wasn't really Brian Jr.'s birthday, but to him, it was like, we're just going out.
Yeah, that would have made more like it is weird that they felt like they needed a reason, and even if for Brian and Nicole, if the reason was like we wanted to get out of the house so our son could have a few friends over for his birthday, so then we went out of the house for his birthday so he could have his party, and we just invited our friends out because like as long as we're exiled from our own home, we might as well have some fun.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
That would have made a lot more sense than celebrating my nephew's birthday without him.
Right. And it's so odd because they all tell us that. It's also odd because at one point, I think this is on cross-examination, Caitlin is kind of grilled a little bit about this. Like the fact that she was there at the house because it was her brother's birthday. And she ends up denying that outright, which of course we know she lived there. So that's not really why she was there. But in other words, she ends up kind of refuting, going against this story that like, oh, this is why we were all getting together. This is why, like, she's like, I don't give a shit that it was my brother's birthday, which is just interesting, right? To note the way that they all,
for Brian Jr.
I know. She does represent it that way, which is really, now again, there might be some additional reason in her mind that we, who the hell knows, but it's not important to us. But again, we note these things. That's really the point.
Well, that goes along with Caitlin and Nicole both bumping into Colin and then saying, oh my God, what are you doing here? Like, isn't it your son's birthday that people would like want to celebrate? Like, shouldn't you be like, oh, I understand why you're here. It's my son's birthday and you're his cousin.
Right? Like, how does that make when they were sitting around together having a conversation about what they were going to say, but I don't think that's what happened. That's the odd thing about these guys. They obviously, Caitlin, Nicole, and Brian Jr. did do some, prior planning together before testimony. but they didn't do anywhere near as extensive a rehearsed plan together as you would expect. And I now attribute that to the prosecutor's office probably saying, don't worry about it. Like, well, we got you.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, maybe they didn't know how much they were covering when they said that.
That too.
I was out there with your sister-in-law. What's her name?
Her name is Caitlin Albert.
And the nephew of yours whose birthday it was or was going to be, what's his name?
His name is Brian as well.
So essentially Brian Albert Jr., even if he's not.
Yes, I believe he's a junior, yes.
Now, with regard to the basketball parents and the other people that you had been with at the junction and then at the game, what, if any, communication was there amongst sort of the basketball parents that evening or any other evening?
Yes, so we had a group text with the basketball parents, a handful of us, where after some of the games, we would meet up afterwards. This evening, I know Jenna or I sent a text out saying where we were going, because we were obviously meeting her sister. And a few of the parents responded where they were going. We kind of split up, except for one couple decided to meet us at the waterfall out of that group text.
And the couple that decided to.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting answer, and it gives us a lot of information, right? Because it kind of tells us that naturally Matt does like to explain. Like, he's not somebody who's comfortable. The short, half sentence responses are not what Matt is, generally and naturally like as a communicator. He likes to give us long-winded sentences with more information. Because we know that this is a completely irrelevant statement. Who cares that they have a group thread with the other parents? I mean, it's just not important. So what that tells us is that, he's really having to use energy to not give more information.
Sarah B. Creative asked if you noticed how his accent changes and gets stronger with different questions.
Not really. Like, you're supposed to kind of ignore, like, ums and ahs and anything that, like, it's just not that important. If it was forced, like, I'm thinking of a Mackenzie Shirilla, because right, like that's a little different, right? Like, she's trying to be like street or something. You might factor that in a little bit differently because it's a forced accent. With Matt McCabe, he's just, this is how he talks.
Yeah.
Waterfall, who would?
That would be Nick and Karina Kolakisis.
When you arrive at the waterfall, you and your wife, do you recall where it was that you parked in relation to the waterfall?
Yes, if you're looking at the front door of the waterfall,
just something to know.
We were parked.
It's not that important. Again, these are not that important, but it does tell us something. Like, he said that would be Nick and Karina Kolakithis. The way he said that, he just put distance between him and them. Clearly there's, he doesn't want to talk about them. Clearly has some kind of a feeling about them, just based on the way he said that, right? There's not closeness there. He said that would be, and that just tells us that he doesn't really want to talk about them.
You feel that in the previous question too, when they ask about the communications, and he said a few of the parents responded that they were going. We kind of split up, except for one couple decided to meet us at the waterfall. Like, those are not fond feelings.
Well, and out of that group text, I mean, yeah, there's other indicators in there as well. I also think he struggles with the name Kolakithis, and so he was a little anxious about saying their name. So that a lot of that was like long-winded avoidance kind of stuff to try to like not say who they were.
It's also really not that hard of a name that people like really struggled with in the trial.
No, it's like the bukkake thing almost to them. Like
Yeah.
they really got anxious. But you know how like when you're anxious about something, it ends up coming out like in the worst way because of that anxiety. This topic is a little bit like that for Matt. But and it does tell us, it gives us information about Matt as a communicator, which is helpful also.
Parked in the parking lot down the left.
And Waterfall sort of shares its parking lot or its establishment with a condo complex. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You park somewhere in that parking lot.
Correct. I parked in the parking lot. Yes.
And when you came into the Waterfall, who, if anyone, did you see there, and where did you go?
When we walked into the Waterfall, we identified where Jen's sister and their party was sitting.
And where were they sitting in relation to the Waterfall?
When you walk in the front door, I believe there's 3 long tables that are set up. We passed, they were in the 3rd table, long table closest to the bar. Across from, there was also a band. They were right across from a little band.
There was a live band there as well.
Yes, there was.
Now, prior to you and your wife entering into the Waterfall.
Yeah, so you can just tell there's
what,
this
if anything,
tension.
you did?
Matt really experiences this tension, right? Between like a desire to want to remain formal and come across in a very well presented way, but then this other part of him who, you know, just doesn't speak that way organically or naturally, that just keeps kind of showing up over and over again. But this is what I said. This is what I meant when I said with Matt, because of that formality, desire, we saw it again with Allie. Took me a while with Allie McCabe to be able to discern what was coming from that place of really wanting to remain formal and rehearsed posturing and performance, and how much was deception versus her being honest, right? So, and Matt does have a thread of that happening as well. But now we're going to start to expect all the indicators to start coming out because we're getting closer to when Karen and John walk into the bar.
So you're saying like there's this additional kind of like filtering going on where he might be actually just telling the truth, but it's coming out a little bit weird because he's also trying to like translate it into formal speech. So instead of being like, we walked into the bar and we like saw our friends at the big table in the back, he's trying to translate into like, what's the smart, like, formal way to describe where we were. I gotcha.
Right. Yeah. He'll use informed. He tries to, my wife's sister instead of Nicole. He tries to translate, and that puts additional pressure on the speech and how it's coming out.
It is like a form of code switching, but it's like code switching into like business talk that he clearly is not very well versed in. So some people who code switch more often probably are more well versed at it.
Well, and that's what we'd be looking for, is just noted really significant differences. So in that way, if if somebody just had no accent whatsoever, and then all of a sudden you get to the sensitive parts and they start, like slanging, then of course you would be like, whoa, what just happened? That's a complete 360. Yeah.
Did, or who, if anyone, you were talking to in the parking lot?
Yes. On the car ride from my house to the Waterfall, and while I was in the parking lot, I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone.
And do you recall just generally what the conversation was about?
Yes, I do.
And what was it?
It was about my daughter, my oldest daughter, Allie, who we mentioned. It was about her hockey team and her hockey coach. I was talking to one of the hockey coaches.
So who we mentioned is a huge, important thing to say, right? So what does that tell you? So he said,
who we mentioned, does he mean who we as me and you, Lally?
Yes.
And that's
what he meant.
So me and you, Lally, we're a team. Remember, we mentioned
right.
Allie.
Correct. Yep, you got it. So, and that's why, that's the kind of thing that you just would not even, unless we're staring at this screen, you're never going to hear that. You're never going to see that. But that's a critical indicator, because what does that tell you right away? That he is part of their team. He's a friend. This is their buddy, right?
That's interesting. And it's distancing from this conversation that he was having in the car that he clearly didn't want to talk about, where he's like, yep, I had a conversation. Yep, I remember who it was with. Yep, I remember what we talked about.
That's right. They don't want to bring all these other people in. So you have to also, all of that, right? You have to, with every one of these witnesses, they do that. Colin does that. Even Michael Proctor does that because he wants to keep out the chief of police at the time. So you really always have to factor that in with all of these guys. They all do it, and they all do it to protect sort of ancillary characters, some who are important to the story and others who just really aren't at all. Like Michael, the hell was that guy's name? Colin's friend. No,
Mike Leonetti.
Mike Leonetti, right, yeah.
He might become more important.
He might become more important, yes.
And when you were talking to this person, this was inside the car, is that correct?
That is correct.
And despite it being sort of the wife's car, was your phone hooked up to the speakers? Did you have a Bluetooth or anything like that?
I don't know if I connected mine to the Bluetooth or not.
Oh, so that's interesting.
I don't recall if I was.
So he said, I don't know. And that's a little bit interesting just because we haven't seen a ton of I don't know. We've seen I don't recall a lot. He will say it in other ways, but we don't see, like, these are things that you just kind of have to be mindful of, right? When he starts like switching his denials, this might be important, and we'd have to really look at it much more closely. But you see also there's some repetition here. And I wonder if this is because he's aware that there's going to be questions about his phone being connected to Bluetooth later.
Right. Or if there was like some way that he didn't go in that car, that they're trying to show when he was in the car.
Right.
It just doesn't, he's trying to not tie himself basically to anything he doesn't have to.
Right. There's some reason for him to be deflecting in this moment. That's right. Yeah.
Also, when you just brought up Mike Leonetti, before I forget, remind me to tell you about the screenshot of the text. I feel like the ha 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 Mikey's making me shotgun just goes down at the bottom of that conversation, where just remind me to tell you later.
Okay. The screenshot you're talking about,
I was connected to the Bluetooth. No, I know my phone connects, so possibly. I don't know for sure if it was 100% connected that evening.
Yeah, there's something about this. This right here, this is clearly sensitive to Matt. So I don't know why. We don't know why. But this entire response jumps out at us, and we would have to really pick it apart. So, and again, remember, if we're doing this, this would be like my first high level analysis. I would be going, yep, something's going on here. We don't know what it is, but we better investigate, because clearly the indicators are jumping off the page at this statement. Right. Yeah. So
now, with respect to it being,
and the other thing I just would say here is
your wife.
This was a place I would get stuck a lot in the beginning. I would always want to be bringing the future, what we know now, into the past, but you don't want to do that unless there are indications that they're doing that. So my first instinct would be, it's something about that night. So we would have to really think first, walk through that sequence of events, place ourselves in Matt's shoes at that moment and say, okay, why in this moment? I think they're talking about on the way to the waterfall. Is that what we're talking about?
I think he's on the drive to the waterfall, whose car they were in, and then if his phone connected to the Bluetooth.
Right, exactly. So for whatever reason, there's something we have to assume about that night, that call, whether his phone was connected to Bluetooth, that he's being shady about, right? We don't know what it is. We don't know why it is, but that would be my initial assumption. And then I'd look to talk myself out of that. So I'd have to, so now I would zoom in and go through every word line by line and try to figure out more specifically, what is he really concerned about? Like, is it the Bluetooth? Is it the person he was talking to that he doesn't want us to know? Is it about Jennifer? Is it, what is going on here?
Wife's car. Is there, when both of you are in the car, is there
right?
sort of a default as to which of your phones would connect to the Bluetooth, yours versus hers?
If look at it that way, it'd be my wife's because it was her car.
So the car would probably recognize her device over your device, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Now,
Actually, I started the call definitely on my phone because my kids were I was on the call for a while. So I think I had my kids still in the car
All right.
when I was dropping them off. So
Now we learn that it's the call. So that tells us that it gives us more information. This call, for whatever reason, is a sensitive call to Matt McCabe.
I know you said don't do this, so don't do the future things, but the same situation is going to come up when they're leaving in the same car with the Bluetooth, driving over to 34 Fairview, and that's when John calls and says where do they live, and they're giving directions, and there's a part of that conversation that's like, okay, so you could hear the conversation too. Is this setting that up?
Probably not.
Okay.
I know that is the thing that I want to always do, but
Yeah.
probably not, because he was willing to tell us that Jen is the default on the phone. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, people are going to, when they're back in a sequence of events and somebody's taking them through moment by moment, they're going to go back to that event. And so whatever is coming up is specific to that moment. And if they're interjecting from the future, usually you'll see verb tense changes. There will be indicators that that's what they're doing. And I don't see enough of that to say that. I mean, it's not impossible, but it seems to me like this phone call from Matt at this moment, because he just referenced it as the call itself is important to Matt in some way.
Interesting. I wonder why.
I know.
I wouldn't have them listening to the call. So I must have been on, again, I don't remember, but I must have been listening.
I wouldn't have them listening to the call.
This call, right. So it's like whatever was going on this call is important to him. And for example, could have been like his brother, who he has a close business relationship with, right? It could be somebody he doesn't want us to know about.
He said it's Allie. Didn't he say it was Allie's hockey coach?
That's what he said at one point. Yes. That's what he said at one point. But it was interesting because he said, I wouldn't want them to hear it, right?
Yeah. I was talking to one of the hockey coaches.
Yeah. There's something
that's being sketchy to be sketchy.
It's something there's something off here for sure.
Weird.
Sitting on holding it in my hand.
and when you come into the waterfall, do you recall about what time that was?
9 o'clock, give or take a couple minutes.
And again, you come over to a table closest to the bar, and who's in the group when you get there?
When we arrived, it was Nicole, Caitlin, Caitlin's boyfriend, Tristan, Chris Albert, and Julie Albert. We were also joined by Nick Kolakisis, who I mentioned. I just don't remember if Nick was already in or if Nick walked in right after me, but Nick and I we got there similar times. I just don't know if he was already sitting in the bar or standing there when I walked in, or if he came in right after.
Okay.
Oh, and Jen, obviously.
And
so we might just pause and be like, all right. He just gave us a list. What was the order? Was there anything specifically important about that list? Was it a sensitive list? Off the top of my head, I didn't see anything super important. It's a little interesting that, again, he's kind of putting some distance between him and the Kolokithis, not hugely important. They certainly would be the outliers for Matt McCabe because they're the ones that he's the least close to. Right. So
He didn't even mention Karina, just Nick.
did he? I think he said both of them in the beginning, didn't he?
I thought he just said.
I thought he referred to them in the plural.
We arrived. It was Nicole, Caitlin's boyfriend, Tristan, Chris Albert, Julie Albert, and we were also joined by Nick Kolokithis, who I mentioned. I just don't remember if Nick was already in or if Nick walked right in after me. And where Nick and I, no Karina.
That's true, though. Remember, because she comes in later.
Oh, that is right. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Remember, her kids were like the ones that led her to go.
Her kid said, "Come on, Mom, you gotta go.
Yeah, you gotta go
fun.
out. Yeah,
You're the only normal mom in Canton. You gotta go show them what normal moms do."
Yeah, she was cute.
You're right. Good.
High top table in this sort of group, either them that you're talking about or throughout the course of the evening. These were people that were either sort of family or friends of yours or your wife.
Oh, yes, that's correct. Yeah, family and friends, correct.
And so whether or not you and Mr. Kolokithis came in.
He used Jen's line, family and friends.
He did. Yeah.
Same time or slightly staggered at some point.
That's another good example, though, because
yes, that's
Lally used it in the question. So that's always something that I'm looking for. Is another way that the question's really important because, if somebody's interjecting something on their own versus just taking somebody's question and then regurgitating it, you would want to note that, right? Certainly.
Yes.
That's correct.
And with respect, obviously you were out and you were at a bar, correct?
Yes.
And from what you recall, you were drinking and most, if not all, of the other people were drinking as well?
Yes. Yeah. Everybody at the table, to my recollection, was drinking.
And do you recall specifically what you were drinking on that night?
I do.
And what were you drinking?
I was drinking vodka with water and a splash of Crystal Light.
And is that something that you would normally drink?
No.
And why were you drinking?
Look at him get red. You see
I was
he got a little, he's embarrassed. So he got a little red there in the cheeks and then top of his head, which is so stupid, right? Like, who cares what, but he tells you a lot about Matt, though. I mean, these are like the stupid little things that you would start to pay close attention to, right? Because you can see like what matters to him and what his value system is. And he also makes fun of John, remember, with the Corona, with the limes. That comes out I don't remember when that comes up, but it comes up probably soon here too.
Matt, if it makes you feel any better, nobody thought you were like super tough up until this moment. So
right,
it wasn't
exactly.
the drink. It wasn't the drink that made us think that maybe you weren't like the machoest dude out there. Which is fine. You don't need to be. Nobody was expecting that of you. You're a girl dad. It's cute.
It's so funny, right? That he's like that.
I was in a diet competition with other people in the town, so I was trying to stay away from any beer, which would be what I typically would drink.
And as far as your observations of the other people there throughout the course of the night, did you note anyone in your group, either at that time or subsequent in the night, to be sort of overly intoxicated or drunk or anything like that?
No.
And as far as the other people in your group, as far as drinking was concerned, at that time or any time later in the night, was their drinking sort of commensurate with the amount that you were drinking?
I wasn't paying attention to see who was drinking, how much they were drinking. I don't even know how many I had. Maybe at least 3, maybe 5. I don't know for sure.
This answer jumps out right away. It's way too long of an answer given the question. Was your drinking commensurate with everybody else? This was a yes or no answer. Yes.
Yeah. Even saying I wasn't paying attention like to how much other people were drinking, that makes sense. Like that's kind of a normal, I wasn't like looking around. And then he just keeps going.
right. And there's some sensitivity. He stumbles a little bit. He repeats I right at the beginning. So what that tells us, actually, the no I knew was right away was off. Remember that no is because he stopped. Like he actually, which we don't see a lot of these people don't do this. He actually stopped and thought about the answer. Like was anybody particularly drunk? Right? I don't remember the exact wording, but yeah, was anybody drunk or overly intoxicated? And he's like, he thought about it. He's like, no. Now we have to always remember that no is the easiest way to lie there is. So when I hear no's, I consider them, obviously. We haven't heard a lot of no from Matt. So it's interesting.
Because he and I are a team,
Yes, that's right. They're a team. That's right. And he just doesn't say no to this point for whatever reason. So it was like, oh, that's interesting. We haven't heard a lot of no's. I note that. But I also just take it with a grain of salt. When I see no, I take it with a grain of salt. It just doesn't really mean that much to me.
Right. And what do you think of at least 3, maybe 5?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Clearly, people were drunk. I mean, that's the answer.
Yeah.
What we know from this question is people were drunk. He doesn't want us to know it. People were drunk.
Yeah.
That's it.
But give or take something there. But again, I wasn't paying attention to see.
And yeah,
if
but
anybody
again,
was.
But again, this is a disaster, this answer. But it is important because it tells us what Matt looks like when he's kind of, tripped up a little bit, when you see how hard it is to lie. It's really not that significant of a question. I mean, unless it is, right? Unless the person that was particularly drunk is the person that's involved in the crime, which is very possible. And if that's in Matt's head, then this question is going to look the way we see it here. But the reason why this might be important, we also see there's just some outright deception here that I can see just from on the screen. So this question is deceptive. He clearly saw that people were drunk. Somebody was drunk. And it's the kind of question where we say, all right, well, now we kind of have a sense of what it probably looks like when Matt is being deceptive. So we would note it.
Fidgety.
He's fidgety. He hedges. You start to see him reducing a lot of commitment. He reduces commitment all over this, I think at least twice in this sentence. He's starting and then he has to add more. He wants to continue to answer right after he finishes giving an answer. And yeah, you can see that you can see it, right? You can see that he's sensitive.
Yeah.
Drinking faster than somebody else or et cetera.
Right.
Et cetera.
And it's way too much information. That's the biggest red flag. Like if you see a question that can be answered in 1 word or 3 words or 6 words, and all of a sudden you have 2 or 3 paragraphs of text, something is wrong. You don't even have to look at the answer and it's deceptive. There's something wrong with this answer. It's screaming at you right away.
And sometimes I feel like it's like what you were talking about with Sarah Levinson recently about adding in the information that you have a story that you feel that you need to share. In this case, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like he thinks the more I explain, the more I'm going to seem like I'm not lying and I'm just describing the scene. When in reality, you're like jumping over here and over here and over here and over here. And in the end, you really said nothing except that you're lying.
Exactly. Yep. And that's another obvious tactic, right? Is when people try to give you too much information to fill in the detail, right? It's like, people think that details make them sound more innocent, but it's the exact opposite in reality. Yeah.
Got there at 9 and left a little after 12. So a little over 3 hours.
Now, remember, we're getting closer to John.
Roughly 9 o'clock to about midnight or so, correct?
Yes, I recall leaving a little after midnight. Correct.
Now, the initial group that you walked over to around the time that you got there, did that group expand or contract? Did people come or leave? Or can you explain sort of the order of that over the course of the year?
Yes. Shortly after we settled in, Nick's wife showed up. Could have been 15, 20 minutes. I don't remember the exact time, but Nick's wife, Karina, came. And give or take 45 minutes, an hour after that,
so
Ryan.
now you're starting to see the language the time issues, right? So we have shortly after, we have these vague indicators of giving us time. Now, this is ridiculous because we can all see on the waterfall video that what the times people come and go, right? So it's just not that important. But this is the first trial. I'm not so sure these guys really understood that yet. I think if this was now, everyone would know the waterfall video is circulating. It's out there. The other thing is, though, that remember, he has marching orders about vague time, and you're going to hear these exact same phrases when it does matter. So we now start to see that he's going to hedge on time.
At least he does it a little bit better than Tristan. So I don't know. I didn't say anything. I don't know time.
Tristan, poor Tristan. It's like, if you want to know if these people are guilty of something, you just have to watch Tristan, because you're like,
you just need a picture of Tristan's face.
Like,
one
what
screenshot.
is going on? Like, why is this guy having a nervous breakdown? This is like the craziest thing you've ever seen. It's one of the great
Brian Albert,
of all time.
Senior, and Brian Higgins showed up. And around 11-ish, give or take, I don't know the exact time, Karen Reed and John O'Keefe showed up as well.
Let me ask you a little bit about some of those other. But let me ask first about, as far as Caitlin's boyfriend, Mr. Morris, how long was he there that night?
I don't recall how long he was there. I do know he left. He had mentioned something about working that evening. There was obviously a snowstorm coming in that evening, and he had mentioned that he was going to go home for a little bit before he had to go out, and I don't know if he was plowing or shoveling or doing something, but he was going to be going out that evening to plow, I believe.
And Christopher Albert and Brian Albert, they're brothers, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
I think it's funny how they all like have the same stories, because really, if you're out at a bar, if somebody's boyfriend leaves, like they don't tell every single person, like, I'm leaving because I have to plow, I'm leaving because I have to plow. Like, that story didn't come from Tristan. I get why he feels the need to say it. But in reality, when Tristan left, he probably didn't notice that Tristan was even there in the first place. Like why his niece's boyfriend left a little bit early. It's not like he was like, oh man, Tristan's leaving.
I know, right? They're not like BFFs. No, absolutely true. But it's also a true story. So it's like,
yeah,
it's but you can see it's a rehearsed story is really what it is.
Well, that's what I mean, is that story is like a true story in that he knows he needs to say it, but it's not true from his memory of that night, because he didn't talk to Tristan and say like, oh, you're okay, dude. Like, you don't know if you're plowing or you're doing something else. Okay, well, bye.
That's right. So what we could do here, because of that, like you probably could, for example, if later on in testimony, I had some questions about whether or not something he was saying was true or not true, I might come back to this part of his testimony and say, well, there was that moment where he interjected something from the future into the past. How did he say that? Right? Like, and then it might give us more insight into why he's doing something later. So that's the other thing. You're really tracking. That's kind of what baselining is mostly. It's just tracking so that when there's discrepancies, you are very aware of what they are and where they are. Yeah.
That's like a good reminder, because I feel like me personally, like I have a tendency to want to right away kind of be like, okay, wait, we figured this out. And it's like, no, this is just like collecting information for the whole time of baselining.
That's right.
Christopher Albert's wife is Julie Albert, is that correct?
Yes.
And she is also friends with your wife, Jennifer McKay, correct?
Yes.
And been so for years, as far as you know?
as far as I know, yes, they've been friends for years.
Now, you mentioned someone by the name of Brian Higgins. Did you know Brian Higgins prior to that evening?
Yes.
I mean, how did you know?
I had met Brian a few times, social settings. I recall meeting him at the Junction one evening. I believe I met him at a graduation party. I don't know how many times I met Brian, but I met him maybe 3, 4 times. I don't know exactly how many. So I knew who he was.
You knew who he was as far as he was friends or friendly with your brother-in-law, Brian Allen.
So this isn't it. We would just kind of pay closer attention to this response because it feels a little bit sensitive, right? So I might go back and say, okay, wait, what exactly was the question? How was it worded? That kind of thing. You know, I don't know that it was terribly significant, but I might be paying closer attention here. So he said,
Brian Higgins prior to that evening. Yes. How did you know him?
and then he says, I had met Brian a few times. Yeah, another thing to keep in mind, sometimes the transcripts, the auto transcripts, just so you guys know for the future, they will take out misspellings or double I's or whatever. So you just always want to keep that in mind when you're going off of transcripts. But actually, YouTube is pretty good of some of the transcript readers. So he says, I had met Brian a few times, social settings, right? So Brian, a few times, social settings. You can just sort of see here that he is like trying to censor how he's answering this, right? He's careful. He's being very careful.
And it's, even though he's trying to say, even though I've met him this many times, like each time was the first time I met him, basically. Like we didn't maintain, we didn't have a relationship.
Well, and it's also weird that he feels the need to specify these things. For example, normally you might say, we met a few times at a party or whatever. You wouldn't, we met this day, we met at this time. You wouldn't necessarily feel compelled to give very specific information. So it's just odd that he's being so specific.
Unless something really stood out, like each time that you were out with him, he was like so drunk that it caused a scene, and you remember those specific times because there was a scene at the graduation party, and there was that scene at the Junction, and there was that scene when we were leaving CF McCarthy's, and there was the scene at D&E, and those stood out to you because of that, which is kind of what it seems like closer to what he's saying is like, this guy again.
Yeah, right. That's funny. But it's weird that it's overly specific because he doesn't ask for that, right? What does he say exactly, Lally? He says,
how did you know him?
How did I know him, right? I had met Brian a few times, social settings. Yeah, it's a little odd that he's giving us specific information unless Lally had asked for it. Like, do you remember where you met him? Or something more specific. It's just a little odd.
That actually feels like an answer that you do more with somebody, like if they were asking, like, how did you know John O'Keefe? And then it had been something that, like, after his death, you kind of went back and you were like, what were all those times that we spent time together? I met him that one time, I met him this other time. And you're just trying to recall them as like, oh man, I'd been with him all of those times and now he's not here anymore.
Yes. Yeah, sure. Or, it's like you always have to factor in like what we refer to generally as consciousness of guilt or information that you have that you're holding that other people don't have. So if that information would in some way inform how you answer a question, then you might consider, is he answering this because Brian Higgins is, I don't know. Something about Brian Higgins is specifically important to Matt McCabe that he does or doesn't want us to know about.
Yes. I'm going to let it play for a sec. My dog is knocking on the door. I just got to go run and let him out.
No problem.
Yeah, correct.
Yes.
And that's how you knew him, was through Brian Albert.
Yes.
And do you know where Brian Albert Sr. and Brian Higgins had been prior to them coming to the waterfall?
Yes, I was informed that they were in New York, coming back from New York from a funeral of a New York police officer.
And both of them, as far as you knew, Brian Albert Sr. and Brian Higgins, they were in law enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that at some point around 11 or so, John O'Keefe and Karen Reed came into the waterfall, correct?
Yes.
And just to be clear, when you speak of Karen Reed, that's someone that you had met prior to this evening as well?
Yes, that's correct.
And clarity purposes, for the record, do you see Ms. Reed in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Could you just describe as where she's seated or an article of clothing?
She is seated at the table with her attorneys. You want me to describe her clothing?
If you could.
Black, I don't know, sweater, I'm not sure, dress.
Just as a record of like identification.
Yes.
Now, with regard to Mr.
Steve Mackett.
How was it?
Washed again there.
What was that?
He was asked to point out Karen and describe her article of clothing, and you can see he got a little flushed again there. He got a little embarrassed. Which is interesting.
Love that for him.
I've met John O'Keefe when he started to be the caretaker for his niece and nephew after their parents had passed.
Okay, so here, really
specifically
interesting. You have two afters after their parents had passed. Now, if we didn't know anything about the story, it's very interesting that he reiterated after their parents had passed. What that tells us is he's leaving important things out of the story, right? Now, obviously, if you're familiar with the story, then it's clear what he's leaving out. But it tells you that when you hear the word after from Matt, it's a word that has significance. It means that he's leaving something out.
I like that little, yeah.
And it's probably sensitive, right? So certainly with Matt, and it's interesting, not everybody's like this. Some people will repeat a lot. We'll use repetition, like they'll repeat something 6 times. With Matt, we really only see so far him repeating a word or phrase twice. So it's either sensitive or deceptive. If we start to see more repetition than that, then we know we're in big trouble because we have not really seen more than that so far.
Right. Question. I like that. The V said it's like we're getting the keys to his brain. Question for you: if we are only going till 1 o'clock, you have a hard out at 1, right?
Yes.
We have 10 more minutes. Do you think we should try to skip ahead to a more sensitive moment?
Yeah,
or we're not ready
try
for
to do it. Let's do that. It's a great idea.
So we're going to skip ahead to. Thank you, Trial Channel, for making this so easy.
Right. God.
Should we go to Julie's brother shows up / seeing Karen's car?
Sure.
Getting to the house.
Either one.
Let's do getting to the house.
Getting to the house is a fun one.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay,
Getting
we're going to skip ahead a little. We're going to pretend we did a full baseline. We understand the process now. You've given us the tools that we can do it on our own now.
You certainly can.
Teach a man to fish.
Where your wife drove that night?
Yes.
Now, as far as when you arrived at the house, where did your wife park the vehicle in relation to the house?
She pulled the vehicle into the driveway.
And you're obviously familiar with the.
Okay, so first thing, you may not have seen it. It's very subtle, but you see how he's seated differently. He's actually seated upright and closer to the microphone than he's been so far. That was the very first thing I saw as soon as you switched to the new screen. It's like, why is Matt upright and closer to the microphone, right? So clearly he's, he's standing to attention.
He's locked in.
He's locked in. He's really listening. His face is pretty red. And you're going to hear now that formality come back in a big way
Mhm.
because he's going to lean on that as much as he can to try to get through this, which is really interesting to watch. So I don't remember what
He
was
also
just
his face looks like softer now, like he's trying to appear like, oh, like
right,
little old
right.
us.
He's trying. He's trying. So the question, let's go back to the
Address or the
question.
residence.
Sorry. Yeah.
I was paying attention to too many things to remember the question. So I think the answer was we pulled the vehicle into the driveway, but I forget what the question was.
Your wife drove that night, and as far as when you arrive at the house, where did your wife park the vehicle in relation to?
And then I guess
Just
he
listen to
tapered
that
off.
again. Let's listen to that again.
Where your
Wow.
wife drove that night.
Yes.
Now, as far as when you arrive at the house, where did your wife park the vehicle in relation to the house?
In relation to the
She pulled-
house.
Yeah, relation to the house. Yep.
That question alone feels like you could do a whole statement analysis on a Lally just asking that question.
Well, and right now, so I can see just from where Matt is looking to get the answer to this question that this is a rehearsed answer. So you see where Matt is looking, right? So he's looking straight ahead. And so far, when Matt has answered questions, that's not where he goes for information, right? So most of us are going to, when we're thinking, we look up and, up and away to try to access a memory or even an answer. Like, somebody was asking me questions yesterday and I could see myself looking up and away for the answer. Like, is that true? That kind of thing. You can see here, he's not doing that.
Pulled the vehicle into the driveway.
And you can see the
you're
formality
obviously
now.
familiar with the address or the residence at 34 Fairview, correct?
Yes, I am.
It's bright red.
Before this evening.
Yes, I have.
And essentially, there's two garage doors on the house. There's one on the left, one on the right. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall whether or not your
Look at
wife
his
parked on
face.
the left side of the driveway or the right side?
I believe it was the left, but the driveway is fairly wide. It kind of widens out, not just the two doors. So I don't know if she was right on the left where the walkway is, or if she was, one kind of more in the middle, because that driveway you could pull up even on the right of her, but somewhere, I don't know exactly, but she pulled into the driveway.
Yeah, I mean,
So she pulls in the driveway. She parks.
this statement just starts screaming in every way, shape, and form. And there's so much to unpack in here. You could probably do just an hour on this response, right? It's so incriminating. It's hard to even know where to start for so many reasons. So first of all, where he looks to get the answer is off. So you know right away that we're not in his memory. So he has some incentive to give us information that is right. We don't know what it is yet, but we know that it's not 100% coming from his memory, which means information is like he's trying to merge information that he wants to interject with real memories. That's where things get really complicated because that's much harder to do. It's much more taxing on your brain. And typically that's referred to as cognitive load. It means that you're putting too much on you at that moment in combination with the pressure of the moment itself. And that starts to cause you to screw up royally. And that's what we're seeing from Matt all over the place right out of the gate, right? And then he reacts to his own screw ups, which is another thing that Matt does specifically to Matt. And that's why the last thing that you see is this like overly formal, very short answer as like a corrective measure. But there's a lot of information in here too. So it's important. Yeah.
Yes.
So where is
You guys go in the house.
So you want to go back here. He says, I believe it was the left. All right. So he says, whether or not your wife, do you recall whether or not your wife parks on the left side of the driveway or the right side? He says, I believe, so right away we're reducing commitment. I believe it was the left. Okay. But the driveways, I think he actually says fairly wide.
Mm-hmm.
And then he starts using his hands, which is also an indicator for Matt. So he's like, it kind of widens out. Not just, we have a just, the two doors. So you see that, like, we already don't know what the hell he's talking about. Like, what?
Right.
What? Right. So the description is off right away. But what he's saying ultimately is that he starts out telling us she's on the left behind the left garage door. But then he's like, but it might have been on the right because the driveway kind of widens out. It's not just the two doors. So I don't know, another reduction of commitment, if she was right on the left where you know the walkway is, or if she was, you know, another reduction of commitment, kind of more in the middle. Because that driveway, which is another indicator, that driveway, you could pull up, and here he gives it away, even on the right of her. So if you track all of that, what that means is Jennifer is in the middle, because if you could park to the right of her, then she was in the middle, right?
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying? So he just told us that he gave away that she's not actually parked on the left side. She was parked in the middle, because he's describing that part to her right, where there's not an actual garage door, but there's space. And then he says on the right of her accidentally. So then he catches himself doing that, and he kind of gets spooked. And then he says she pulled into the driveway.
Yeah, he just goes back to what he was supposed to say originally.
Exactly. And by the way, the fact that there was so many words, because that is the right answer. The right answer is, and that's the thing you also have to remember with statement. You always have to ask, what's the right answer to this question? If you know what the right answer is and you can say it in 4 words, and he's going on and on like this, I mean, that is, you know, he's being deceptive. The question is, what is he being deceptive about and why?
Okay, this will probably be our last clip, and then we gotta wrap it for today.
Yes.
When you get inside the house, who, if anyone, do you observe?
When we entered the house, we observed Caitlin, Brian Jr. Brian had 2 friends there, Julie Nagel and Sarah Levinson, Brian Higgins, and Brian Albert Sr.
And where?
Did I say Nicole? Nicole. I don't know if I said Nicole.
And where in the house were they situated?
When I recall, everybody was congregated when you walk in the front door, to your right, there's a table, and then there's an open floor where it goes right to the kitchen and the room with the table. They just flow.
So this is just screams at you in every way. So like this sentence is the one before it, where he's describing who's there. You see that he's self-censoring, right? So you know that he's being very careful about what comes out of his mouth. You can see it. He's pausing after every person that he names. And then he's like, so again, he's doing this extra cognitive load thing where he's trying to take what he knows he has to say with what really happened and produce a meaningful response. But it's putting a lot of extra pressure on him, which is why it's coming out the way it's coming out, right? He has an agenda. That's really important to remember. He wants to sell this to us. But then we get to this next one about where they are, and it just falls apart pretty fast. Because again, what would be what's the answer to this question? Exactly how does he word it?
I recall everybody was congregated when you walk in the front door to your right, there's a table, and then there's an open floor where it goes right to the kitchen, and in the room of the table, they just flow into each other.
And it goes like this, flow into each
So
other.
the people are surrounding either the island in the kitchen or the table area.
Yeah. And what was the question? The question was, where is
question
everybody
was-
situated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where in the house were they situated?
Yeah. And so again, what's the right answer? Well, kitchen.
Yeah.
Where was everybody
People
situated?
were
Oh,
all
we were
over
in the
the
kitchen.
pla-
Right.
like-
We were in the family room. We were in the kitchen. It does not
Mhm.
require 10,000 words. It just requires not even a full sentence. And if we're going
Right.
based on the way Matt tried to start out in this, in how he began his testimony, remember, he was giving such short answers that he was trying not even to, put the answers into full sentences. So that was
Mhm.
like the target. And now you see where we are. I mean, there's redundancy, there's repetition. It doesn't even make sense, right? There's layers here. I mean, we could, again, take 40 minutes just to pick apart this answer. Yeah. So.
Okay, we'll pause there for today. People are already requesting for you to do a part 2 of this. So I think
Yes,
we need to
we
do that. But if
definitely
you're going to
will.
leave everybody with one kind of like, if we're going to take the tools that you just gave us and try this out on our own, what is like your biggest piece of advice for doing statement analysis and like putting this into action?
I would say start really high level and just pay close attention, because you're going to notice that there's really distinct changes, and then zoom in where you see the distinct changes in how somebody's behaving, because it's those changes that are going to hold all the answers.
I think I have like the hardest time with that, because I really do want to like, oh wait, but he said this, but let me pull up this. And that's where I kind of like lose the plot. Like I have a really hard time with this. I have a really hard time even just looking at the screen. Like I'm usually just listening and not looking.
Yeah.
And so that's something like if I want to start doing this more, that I'm going to have to like make a conscious effort to be like, I'm setting a timer. I'm watching this for 45 minutes. I'm not looking away from the screen. I'm not looking away from their face. I'm not like drawing any conclusions other than just collecting information. And that's that.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's why it's hard for me too, because you have to do that. You have to be more analytical about it. And that sometimes you just don't want to be, right? It takes a lot of, yeah.
It's more fun to just be like, wait, liar.
Yeah, right. Or like not just like you're half listening, right? Like not even really paying close attention, but you really have to like study them, and it's big pain in the ass. Yes.
Well, we thank you for doing that, because it's something that I don't think anybody else has really had the knowledge, the patience, the time to do it. And
Right.
you're doing it at such a high level and so well. And we've all learned so much from you. I appreciate you. There are no words to describe how much we appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Have a great day, Sam.
You too. Thanks for having me. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for coming. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, you guys, I got to hop off in a minute too, but I have just enough time that I need to, before we go, play Fervent's new song. If you haven't heard it yet, I am so excited to be the one to bring this to you. This is Fervent's newest jam.
Up into my office, got you flowers and some chocolate. I don't really do this often, but I think we need some talking. First off, is it Deva or Diva? I think I have liver fever, but before we take this deeper, I need to know if you're a keeper. What did you see in the salad bowl? Are you sure it's something you need to report? I got an idea, I hope you agree. How about you blame it on a false memory? When the feds came, why did you sing? You should've knew better and gave me a ring. Know this and know this only before you go and give your testimony. Officer Deva, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Oh, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Oh, do the right thing. Don't get it twisted, this ain't a bribe, but if you tell the have your back. Unless they ask me some questions, I'll have your back. Until I throw you under the bus, I'll have your back. Let this be a lesson, I'll have your back. Really means I won't have your back. When the feds came, why did you sing? You should've knew better and gave me a ring. Know this and know this only before you go and give your testimony. Officer Dever, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Oh, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Oh, do the right thing. Unfortunately, Kelly, you're the only one going down. There won't be a public records lawsuit that'll expose me or anything.
So good. I had that just nonstop in my car yesterday. It's so, so good. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Sam, for absolutely everything. I'm sorry I need to run out now, but I got to go pick up the little guy. And I will see you guys tonight at Squirrel School. Have the loveliest day.
If you need a place to breathe, some stress to just relieve, then come watch Emily C, where we keep it drama free. We want justice for John O'Keefe, Aiden and Kelsey, wave bye-bye to Morrissey. Let's clean up Norfolk County. Emily C, the one we need, reading sidebars with Corey, writing Hank diaries, giving the people what they need. It's my pleasure to entertain, keeping you laughing makes my day. Positivity all the way. Why don't we tell Satan not today? And now it's time to say goodbye. But before we say goodnight, just keep one thing in mind. Please like, comment, subscribe.